Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today we have one more set of great revenge stories. But before we start, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. And our first story. HOA board tries to force me to remove my trampoline. I get them removed from the board instead. I put a trampoline in my backyard in early 2017. I have 3 young boys, and we've enjoyed it immensely. My neighbor, the HOA president at the time, went to sell his house in the spring of 2018, and his realtor said the trampoline in my backyard might be a detriment to getting top dollar for his home. So he convinced the neighbor on the other side of my house to complain as well. Out of the blue, I received a message from the HOA property manager that the neighbors complained and I would need to submit a form to get it approved. Intermission. What's sad is that I was friendly with both of these people. They'd been in my home. They could have talked to me face to face. With one of the neighbors, I paid for our shared fence at her request, since her neighbor on the other side wouldn't contribute to their shared fence, another board member and human piece of garbage. I would have been willing to dig a hole for the trampoline to hide it more or purchase a new one with elastic bands rather than springs to make it quieter. Both of those options are cheaper than getting a lawyer. But nobody asked. Nobody came to me to have a face-to-face, heart-to-heart discussion about their concerns. A few ironies. These are 5-bedroom homes. Clearly, people with kids are going to move in, and they're going to be noisy in their backyard with or without play equipment. The guy who sold his home smoked like a chimney. I don't think my trampoline should have been his top concern. The people who ended up buying his home are a great family with 2 kids who don't care about toys in other people's backyards. My neighbors have raised kids to adulthood, one of them 2 very active boys. When I pointed this out to her, the words that actually came out of her mouth were, "I know it's challenging to raise boys, but we're at different stages of our lives." As if that justifies her trying to screw me over. Back to the story. I filled out the form and sent it in. The Architectural Review Committee denied it a month later. I appealed the decision and met with the board in August. They sent me a letter and said it was in violation. I asked which rules I violated. They never sent me a letter, so I asked again a week ago. The property manager was adamant she had sent the letter, but I asked for proof. She forwarded an email where she put my name in the "to" field after the fact. I had a strong suspicion it was after the fact due to the following reasons. An HOA meeting was mentioned that never took place. The responses to my questions varied in color, indicating they'd been edited at different times. She responded immediately to my request for proof by indicating she would forward the email, but then took an hour, presumably editing a draft she never sent. She cited a rule early in the email, but then cited an additional rule later that superseded the first. The first cited rule could have simply been omitted. The message was not marked as forwarded message at the top, and the time sent didn't include seconds. None of these things are a smoking gun, but they are suspicious. I asked the other people in the "to" field if they received a copy of the email with my name in the address field. The only honest member of the board replied he hadn't. The rest remained silent because they didn't want to look like they and the property manager dropped the ball. Intermission. If you're curious why the board didn't like my trampoline, here's the rationale provided in the letter that was never sent. Due to the close proximity of the homes to each other and the small yards, the trampoline is unsightly to the homes surrounding it. Realtors for those homes surrounding you have stated that it is a detraction to selling homes and is lowering the home values of those around it. There have also been neighbor complaints regarding the noise level, which creates those homeowners to be unable to enjoy their homes. They are also unable to use certain portions of their homes while the trampoline is being used. My kids all weigh under 35 pounds. They go to bed at 7 p.m. and don't jump on the trampoline in the morning before 10 a.m. My neighbors bought homes 10 feet away from mine. What did they expect? Back to the story. The year-end meeting was scheduled for yesterday, and 4 board positions were up for election. I got 3 of my friends on the street to run with me. I went door to door every day for a week and spoke with the majority of homeowners about their discontent with the street. I got a third of the community to sign proxy forms stating that I would vote on their behalf if I went to the meeting last night and put these fools on blast. I listed calmly all the ways the current board was failing the community and my plan to right their wrongs. The vote was a landslide in favor of myself and my friends getting elected. One awful board member remains, but he's the minority. We fired the property manager who was uncommunicative and flat out dishonest. The trampoline endures. The only bummer is now I have to manage a street which includes some legit crazy people. But this whole episode has convinced my wife that we will never live in an HOA again, which I count as a huge victory in addition to the trampoline remaining where it is today. And our next story. Senior manager gets me fired. I turn things around and get her job and salary, plus see her break down, then let her know exactly how I got my revenge. I was hired by a company as an assistant manager, a job I was well qualified for. The owner is rarely on site as he owns several businesses. The company's run by a GM who hired me, but who works mostly second shift and who I therefore would have little daily contact with since I was hired for first shift. I was assigned to Eva for training. Eva was a manager and had been with the company 5 years. I trained with her for a few days, then I was on my own, though she and I had overlapping shifts and would see each other a few days a week. We were friendly but not close. After a few months, I was doing well at my job and had even gotten some new procedures adopted to help boost sales. Eva began to act resentful. She would correct me for small things and took any opportunity to remind me that she had trained me. Didn't matter to me. She wasn't my boss. I reported to the GM, so I mostly just ignored her. What I didn't know was that Eva was not just tight with the GM, but they had worked together at another place for 10 years before this one. One day at shift end, GM asked to talk. Tells me it's not working out. Says I'm still making mistakes at 6 months that I shouldn't be. I asked for examples. A few of them were petty matters Eva had mentioned, but most of them were just not true. I tried to argue, but it was clear that I was set up. I decided to reach out to the owner since I had nothing to lose. He was sympathetic but said he relies on the GM to run the business and had to support her decision. Then he mentioned that if things hadn't been so bad between me and Eva, it probably could have worked out. That's when I knew she was behind me getting fired from a job I needed, like really needed, and was making great money. And I vowed to get revenge. I started searching her online info. In less than an hour, I'd uncovered gold thanks to one of those pay services. About 3 months prior, Eva was arrested and charged with DWI in a neighboring state. The court record showed she had a hearing coming up in a few weeks. That was enough to get her fired. It affects a professional license that she and I had to have as management. Per state law, license holders must report criminal charges to the licensing board, and in the case of a DUI arrest, licenses are typically suspended pending trial. I called the owner and told him what I discovered. It was news to him. I guess since it was out of state, Eva was keeping it a secret. Maybe she was hoping to get let off on the charges. The next day, the owner called and said Eva was fired. He thanked me for telling him about her DWI, apologized for how I was fired, and offered me Eva's position and salary. He asked me to come in the next morning to meet with him and to cover Eva's shift. I accepted. That alone was sweet, satisfying revenge. But what happened next was the icing on the cake. I got to work extra early, met with the owner and GM, and we all agreed to start fresh. Cool. It was still an hour before opening, and I was in the back of the place when I heard the front door chime. When I came out a few minutes later, Eva was there, tears flowing, begging the owner for her job back. She obviously didn't know I was there because when she saw me, her whole body seized, and her shocked expression was priceless. I walked right by her, staring her down with a crappy grin, and went outside. Eva came out a minute later and wouldn't make eye contact. As she walked away, I said, "Good luck on the 23rd. That was her court date. And our next story. Didn't pay for fireplace, ended up with house full of smoke. A friend of mine used to install wood stoves and sell firewood. He still sells firewood, but stopped bothering with fireplaces. This one guy bought a fireplace and wanted it installed. My friend did this, but told him it would need a higher chimney for better air drawing. The guy refused it. I'm assuming maybe he didn't want a higher chimney for the look, and my friend kept insisting. The owner said no, and when the fireplace was done, he complained it was hard to get a fire going due to the chimney being too short, leading to poor drawing of air. My friend came with a chimney extension, and it worked fine, but he decided he didn't want to pay still, even though the job was done, and done well. So a few weeks later, my friend was passing through the area and saw nobody was home, but there was a fire going to keep the house warm. Owner must have been at work. So my friend climbed up onto the roof and got his chimney extension back. It was a plus, but not enough to cover everything that was installed and the time put in. Where things get funny is that once he took the extension off the chimney, due to poor drawing of air, the house started to fill up with smoke as the fire burned. The owner must have come home to a thick, smoke-filled home. Try getting that smell out of stuff, LOL. Probably a layer of soot on everything. To my recollection, the owner did not have any pets, so no lives were harmed. But when everything you own is black and reeks like smoke and your home is freezing in the middle of winter, I bet you'd have rather paid someone for their products and services. I hate people like that. When they know from the point they hire you, no matter how good of a job you do, they're going to find some reason not to pay you. And our last story. Just the facts, ma'am. Many years ago, when faxes and landlines were still a thing, we had a landline with a fax connected to it at home. We got a few spam advertisements on the fax, and there was one which stood out because they kept sending it in the middle of the night. I don't remember what this was advertising, but there was no number to call to try to unsubscribe from the item. One night, the phone was ringing at about 1 a.m. I pick it up, and of course, it's a fax. I let the fax go through, and I see it's from the same spammer. Well, that was enough for me. I took the fax and started Googling what I could. Yes, we had faxes, landlines, and Google. After a few searches, I discovered who the owner of the company was and his phone number at home. I decided that calling back at 1 a.m. was the appropriate response. Apparently, the guy also didn't appreciate being woken up at 1 a.m., and he started telling me it's not him. There's a company that handles their advertising, blah, blah, blah. I told him I didn't really care, but I expect that as of the next day, we would be off their list. Never got another fax from that company at any time of the day or night. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.